Happy Tuesday. It's another Teaching Tips Tuesday. My name is Jared Kittelson, Chief Operating Officer here at the Foundation for Blind Children. And today I'm joined by Jay Whipple, Itinerant Division Manager at Foundation for Blind Children and a Certified Orientation and Mobility Specialist. And today we're going to be talking about concept development. Jay, what are some common concepts that are developed in O&M instruction? How can professionals assist in teaching these concepts?
So Jared, there's O&M is kind of always a concept development process, but some really good basic ones that are sort of prerequisite to everything that I wanted to talk about today are body concepts, laterality, so like left and right, and cardinal directions, that north, south, east, west. And if you think about that, it's because in order for a student of ours to move through space, they first have to really understand what their body does. Arms bend, knees bend, we have two hands and how all of those things relate and how all those movements allow you to move through space. And there's lots and lots of ways to reinforce this. Again, left and right is if you want people to start to move, you've got to be able to understand left and right. You can't really go anywhere without it. And then those cardinal directions. So some of the ways that I find it's really helpful for parents or teachers or anyone to kind of reinforce these concepts so that it's not just the O&M specialist once a week is starting to embed these things into your daily routines. So something as simple as washing hands, you can talk about here's your right hand, your left hand. Having breakfast, you can talk about how your spoon is in your right hand versus your left hand and how you relate to the other things on the table. Constantly reinforcing left and right. I love to do a little trick where I will tap a student's left or right shoulder and just reinforce it. Every time we make a turn, I verbalize that turn. And then also helping students understand that their own left and right changes or is opposite of the person they're facing. And then cardinal directions, that's a tough one because I think people sometimes struggle and say, well, how do I teach my kid what north, south, east, and west is? And then one of the simplest ways is when you're driving in the car, just verbalize that route. And say, I'm driving north on First Street and I made a right turn and we're now going east on Main Street. And helping people understand how those things relate to each other. Because left and right change as you turn around, but north, south, and east and west are always the same. So if you're embedding that into your routines, you're just sort of making it part of your common language, that's super helpful. Another really good thing is to remember, collaborate with your other professionals. I love the analogy, it takes a village. There's a bunch of people on an IEP team for a reason, and we're all there with the singular focus of making that student be successful. So making sure that you're always communicating and collaborating with the rest of your team, and that includes parents. Mom and dad are as important to the team as everyone else. And then the last thing I would say is from O&M teachers specifically, like when you're having a lesson plan, especially young teachers, I think sometimes you can get focused on your plan for that day is crossing residential streets. But understand that you can always intertwine these other concepts into your instruction. So even if you're working on crossing streets, you can still be reinforcing other concepts like laterality and body concepts and cardinal directions.
Right on. Jay, what are some ways professionals can develop these concepts? I know you talked a little bit about it, but that also minimize the risk as far as working with your students.
Yeah, so one of the things I always say is a lot of it is practice. You do it over and over and over. It's the same way we learn all the things that we learn in our lives. We just tend to do it by osmosis or visually. But minimizing risk is sort of, that's a super important one. And it's something that we work on as O&M specialists all the time. Safety is my number one concern in every lesson that I teach. And the rest of that student's community or village, so to speak, can help that in a lot of ways. So some really simple things like safety commands. Excellent. Getting students to understand like no means no and stop means stop and wait means wait. Some really simple things to help those students really understand so that sometimes as an O&M teacher, you back off a little bit. You're not right next to the student. But in order to do that, you have to be confident that if you tell your student to stop because there's some danger in the environment, then they're going to do it.
Right.
So everyone around that student can help reinforce that constantly. Help students understand about environmental dangers. Things like some simple commands like, instead of saying, let's go to the car, let's say, let's look for the curb and before you step down. Find the curb with your cane. find the edge of the grass, find any sort of obstacle or hazard that might potentially be there. Just helping to reinforce those things and giving specific directions to your students and your children to say, to help them kind of locate those things that might be dangers or hazards in their environment. And then the last one that I like to have, especially families and teachers work on, is body language. And it's something I think a lot of people don't think about, but the way that you present yourself means a lot. So you notice a lot of our students walk and they look down at their feet and they keep their heads down and they have this kind of look like this. And that's not good. It's not good for your posture. It's not good for your neck and shoulders, but it also conveys a message to the people around you that you're not confident, that you're not ready, that you're not capable. I think about street corners a lot. You want to be up and alert and ready. You're looking around, you're aware of your environment. That conveys a message to the drivers in the cars that are waiting for their light to turn green, that this person on the corner with a cane is serious. They're getting ready to cross the street. If you stand there and you shuffle around and you kind of move and you look at your feet, that's really confusing to drivers who can't hear you, they can't talk to you, and you can't see them even though they're trying to wave you on. So your body language means a lot, and it can increase your safety, and it's something very easy for families and teachers to reinforce.
Excellent. So what are some strategies to develop some of that spatial orientation?
Yep. So this is kind of where this all comes from, is this the relationship of yourself to the environment and the environment to yourself, which is what spatial orientation really is knowing where you are in relationship to things and understanding that your relationship to things can change if you move or maybe those things move. So again, like an example of a street corner, when you are standing at a corner and you're getting ready to cross the street, maybe there's a car to your left that wants to make a right turn around the corner. Well, as that car goes around the corner, your relationship to that car has changed. It was on your left and now it's kind of on your right and exiting back behind you. And so there's an idea of something called self-talk versus parallel talk. And this is something that I do constantly. And I find myself switching between them in instruction all the time. But the idea of self-talk is that when you and your student or your child are in an environment, and it can be any environment, it doesn't have to be a complicated street corner. The student is verbalizing what they are conceiving about the environment, what they feel, what they're finding with their cane, what they might see with their remaining vision, what they hear, smell. They're also talking about the choices that they make. Like, I'm walking straight and I'm making a right turn when I find the grass. And they're sort of verbalizing constantly what they're doing in relationship to the environment around them. Parallel talk is where it's the same idea, but it's the O&M instructor that's verbalizing what the student is doing. And so I sometimes will walk along and say, okay, I want you to shoreline on your right-hand side with your cane tip until you find a right intersecting sidewalk. And as they do it, I'll repeat it back. I'm like, yeah, you're doing it great. You're finding the edge. You're finding the edge. There it is. There's the right intersecting sidewalk. And you're kind of you're verbalizing what's happening. It's not just that sense of touch. And I find that over time, as you talk about the world that you encounter, you're going to better understand your relationship to it. And those are some really simple things that everyone can constantly talk about what's happening, especially with little kids. I love to do this with preschoolers. They're learning their new world, and they need reminders of all the different little cues that are around it, because they may not get them visually.
Right. Excellent. Well, Jay, thanks for your time today and joining us. We appreciate you all joining us for another Teaching Tips Tuesday. Have a great day.
Thank you. My pleasure.